This podcast counts as socializing.
I forgot we had an intro.
Hello. Hi, and welcome back to This Podcast Counts as Socializing, the podcast where we stay inside and socialize. I am your host, Kayla, joined with Abby and Nick. Welcome back, guys.
Hello, it's good to be back.
Hello. How's everyone doing? What's new with everyone?
I'm doing good. I'm in a new apartment. Since the last
I
time
forgot
we
you
filmed.
moved.
Yeah. Yep.
I guess I've also moved since the last time we filmed.
Yeah. Like going
I had
on.
back surgery.
Abby's on spine number 3
Yeah.
since the last time we recorded. Nick's on apartment number 2. I'm on cat number 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, things have been going good. How's 2025 treating everyone?
You know, it's been all right.
Abby.
Cold and busy.
Yeah.
Cold and busy, yeah.
Same,
But
but in
hey.
a fun way.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you worked an 80-hour work week or 90.
Well, yeah, December was not fun, but
You powered through.
it didn't work the last week, and then I worked like 2 days between Christmas and New Year's, and then went skiing with my brother and my cousins because they came out to visit, so that was a lot of fun. Went and did a little ski trip.
Yeah, you ski a lot.
Well, the mountains are close by, and I have a season pass, and I have skis. So
That's true. The mountains are close by.
Sure are. And we've got I got a good home resort here.
Yeah. What degree of like skill are you at with skiing? Like, can you go over like little jumps, or are you just?
Yeah.
Can you do like a hop?
I hit little
Yeah,
jumps. I mean, it's nothing crazy. Like
Do you do little spins?
I'm not throwing double backflips off, cliffs, and I can't spin yet either. I'm working on the spinning this season. That's the goal.
Okay.
Spinning
You've hit
top?
hops, but you
yeah.
haven't hit spins.
Mhm.
Got it.
Yeah.
Time to spin up.
I mean, I can go down any run. It's just some of them are not necessarily like fast or graceful, but I can get down it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm actually terrified about skiing. I think I would literally die. Like, not an exaggeration.
No.
I think I would actually hit my head and die.
That's why you wear a helmet.
Or break a leg. Oh, yeah. I would definitely wear a helmet.
And
Do you remember that one video that Lucas showed us? It's like I think it might be an Olympic skier, like some
Oh,
competition.
the guy that got
skiing.
cut in half?
Yeah, like their leg like twisted and they like died. I don't want to be too graphic, but
I have seen that video accidentally, and it is scarring.
oh my god.
The man is literally like cut in half and then like just slides down the mountain. It's not funny.
How did he do that? What did he hit?
He hit like a guard thingy.
Yeah, it sliced like the ligament.
Yeah, like up him. It's very tragic.
Oh, wow.
I learned how to knit.
On a much lighter note.
I was just thinking about it because it was right here. Let me show you what I got done so far. I learned how to knit this week.
Nice. That looks good. You gotta work on your tension a little bit, but
okay, it looks better when
it looks good. Yeah.
No, yeah, I think you did great.
I think it's
like
pretty
that
good
color
now.
too.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny too because you can see how like you get better as you.
Yeah.
You're like getting more consistent. The further
I had
you
to
go
like
through it.
stop starting over because I started over like 50 times because I was like, I know more now. I could do it better. And I was like, I will never finish anything.
Right, the
get back
minute you
into
mess
knitting.
up.
I took like a class and there were maybe like 10 to 15 people. And the
Oh, that's
teacher was
fun.
like, stop. Everyone needs to stop restarting. Just commit and power through. And I done like maybe like 4 or 5 rows and I was staring at it and I was like, I really want to restart. I really feel like I could do better. And I was like, I'm thinking about restarting. And everyone was like, don't. And then I just looked up and I pulled on the string and everyone gasped. I was like, oh. They all went,
My friend.
and I still
got,
messed up in like the first 3 rows.
Oh.
So
My friend recently got really into knitting, and I need to get him to reteach me because I knew how to knit, and then I didn't do it for like 2 years, and
It's actually
wanna
super
make a
easy.
hat.
It was like
I
confusing.
know, it's really not that
When
bad.
she
I
first
just gotta,
explained it, I was like, I don't actually understand a single thing you just said. And then once I did it, I was like, easy.
yeah.
Now I'm
Like, I
flying,
understand
so
how
I'm
they go
excited.
together. I just need to like remember the hand positions and everything, and
If you probably watched one YouTube video, you could probably pick it up again.
I probably could.
If you saw it once, you'd be like, oh yeah, I remember.
Because I want to make a hat. I've got some nice yarn that I got when I was in Iceland.
You practice before you get to the good yarn.
I will. I've got some other stuff too that I can use. But
Yeah. I now have another craft to start and never finish. I do have like an idea.
What do you want to make?
I'm just gonna finish this off like as practice. I guess it'll be like a scarf. I don't know however much yarn this makes because I don't have very much yarn. And then I have like an idea of a little project that I want to do, but we'll see if I have the time and energy to actually get it done. I don't want to say what it is yet in case I end up not doing it. I don't want it to be like on record.
Don't want to commit to it verbally just yet.
I don't want to verbally commit to the knitting project yet. All right, well, I've got a little, what's the word? Little topic of interest to share with you guys today. Should I share my screen with you, or are you going to look at the images?
I think you should share it.
Let me see if I can. Share screen. God damn it. I gotta tell my computer that it's okay. Well, maybe you guys just look at them as we go.
Yeah, we can do that.
You should give descriptions for the audio listeners.
I will. I'll make sure to describe, and then I'll post all the pictures on our Instagram. So all of our loyal listeners out there, my mom, who's already following, can go follow. Okay, let me pull up my notes. So I told Abby and Nick off air, but I struggled so hard to write an episode this week. I think I was just like, I really wanted it to be a fun topic. And then on top of that, I was having such writer's block because I hadn't like written in a while. And then like I kept picking topics that I was really interested in, but I was like, I need to do more research. My books at the library aren't ready yet. So I changed topics like 4 times before I got to this topic. I think this was one of Nick's ideas. Was it, Nick?
It might have been. It feels familiar to me. I feel like it was something that we discussed at some point in a different episode. So
today's topic is things Victorian children did that would put you in a coma. Because I figured like it'd be a good little best of list, very clear research goals. And I could tell you a little fun facts about the Victorian era. So that's what I'm going to do today. So, little background. The Victorian times were the 63 years that Queen Victoria ruled over the UK. That was 1837 to 1901. And maybe I'm just stupid, but I never put it together that the Victorian era was the era where it was Queen Victoria. And then I was thinking about it and I was like, oh, and then we have the Elizabethan era.
Yeah, and pre-Victorian is the Georgian era.
Yeah. So that's what that is.
George's area.
Mm-hmm. So during this time period, the British Empire becomes the largest empire to ever exist, covering 1/5 of Earth's landmass, and Queen Victoria rules over a quarter of the world's population. During this time, the Industrial Revolution is at its height. Steam-powered machinery comes around, so factories are producing more goods than they ever have before. Britain is the world's leading maker of iron and steel. They invent the bicycle. They invent the electric light bulb. They're having major medical advances. They discover bacteria at this time, and that was a big deal.
Very
and they also, yes, all the steams. The steam is so big, and big steam moment was happening.
Steam was having its moment. This was the steam era for sure.
Steam was that girl, and
Okay, wait, but like go back to bacteria. Can you imagine finding out that something that like we now see as like I don't know, like kind of like gross or whatever, like seeing as unclean, find out that it's everywhere, like at the same time that you find out it exists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like people knew of her. I think they just didn't necessarily understand the link from bacteria to like disease and illness.
Yeah.
So I think that's when they were first like, oh, things dirty is bad. Because it was also when they first started sterilizing like surgical equipment. Because before they were like, that shit don't matter. I feel like one of you has definitely knows the story of the first surgeon that started washing his hands.
Yeah.
And everyone thought he was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they were basically just like dirty bacteria bad.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah,
stop
the
being
four
dirty.
humors, there's bacteria, viruses, never heard of them. The reason you're sick is because your black bile, blood, mucus, and yellow bile are out of balance. I don't remember what they are
Those
exactly.
vibes are off.
Yeah. Your
Organ
phlegm is
vibes
out
are
of balance. Sorry.
Yeah. So, with it being the height of the Industrial Revolution, child labor is at an all-time high and was the norm for the 19th century. There were almost no child protection agencies at the time. There were also very few laws regarding child labor. Some do start to come out during the Victorian era because of all the shit that's going down, but like lawmaking is slow and it took a long time for change to come around. And it was children were just seen as like cheap and necessary labor. They were basically like they were like, you're a small person, so I could give you less money.
Yep.
And that was the whole
They eat
rationale.
less food, they take up less space. Parents would have
They're like, you're like half a person.
Yeah.
Exactly. So some common jobs for children at the time include coal mining, chimney sweeping, factory working, scarecrowing, farming, working in shipyards, street merchants, domestic servitude, rat catching, laundry, matchmaker, potter, pickpocket, railroad station working, hat making, to name a few.
Mm-hmm. The scarecrowing doesn't sound so bad.
No, that's one of them that I looked into just because I was like, that was the one I was like most surprised by, and I was like, that's kind of silly.
Yeah.
So I looked into it a little bit. So we'll come back to scarecrowing.
Okay.
The first occupation that I took a little deep dive into was coal mining. So as we mentioned before, steam is the number one girly at the time. She's the number one energy source. So coal mining was also therefore a big industry because you needed to burn the coal to make the steam to power all of the steam things of the time. And children were big in the industry because they were small and could fit into small spaces, and they could also pay them less than the adult workers of the time. So it was really common.
Use as oxygen. Just gotta think practically here.
You gotta think practically. Your breaths are smaller.
Mm-hmm. When you're using steam power too, you don't need as much like manpower, right? You don't need as much like physical human strength to achieve stuff. So that's why you could get away with kids and a lot of these things too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it was also really common for like the whole household to work together in the mine. So you'd give like the dad some of these more like heavy lifting jobs and then give like their children some of the smaller lifting jobs. Mm-hmm. So they worked at the same amount of hours as the adults did. They just earned less money. And so they typically worked 12 to 18-hour shifts and would work 6 days a week. And obviously this led to some lifelong problems for children, health conditions for children that worked in mines.
Grit.
They had long-term
grit.
Lots of character.
Grit, yeah.
Tough hands, brother. You gotta touch some tough hands.
Kids these days.
My child's hands look like that, so my hands look like this.
They're both just covered in soot.
Oh.
Yeah, so they had lifelong eye problems from working in the dark. It put constant strain on their eyes. And the minor like safety headlamp wasn't even invented until 1815. So they in usually like if they had a candle or a lantern, they would give it to the people that were actually like mining the coal, which was usually like the adults, like the bigger men. And so all of the children were just like in pitch black darkness. They were like, you don't
Yeah.
even need a candle, you'll figure it out.
Plus, you're like burning a candle in an enclosed space and breathing in
Exactly.
the soot
And they're like, well, the
you
only
know.
people that really need to be able to see are the people picking the mine out of the rock, because they need to see where the coal is. And everyone else can just figure it out.
Yeah.
It's kind of their idea.
Move your way around everyone else.
Yeah. They also worked in really small areas that weren't properly ventilated. So as Nick mentioned earlier, a lot of miners developed black lung. So basically, like the dust of the mine becomes embedded in your lungs, and it causes your lungs to harden, making it difficult to breathe, because obviously your lungs need to be able to expand and contract for you to take full breaths. So this led to a lot of people having like long-term asthma and just like general respiratory issues from working in the mines.
Yeah,
Rat
black lung
infestations.
black lung is a disease that is like specific to coal mining. It's when you get a
Yes.
bunch of coal dust in your lungs and you develop,
And they turn
like,
black.
They turn black. You get a bunch of scar tissue. Like you can't breathe well. You're like coughing and wheezing all the time. And not something. You
Yeah,
want.
and like obviously bad for everyone working in the mine, but like particularly bad for like children in developmental years whose lungs are still growing.
Yeah.
Another common issue in the mines was rat infestations. Rat infestations were kind of an issue in all major cities at this time, but if you think about it, rats also like dark underground locations. So it was a big issue, and they spread a lot of illness and disease. So a lot of people got sick because of this. Children also often developed spine deformities because they were working in very small. Yes, Abby, our childhood miner, knows a lot about it.
Yeah, I have scoliosis because I worked in the mines as a child.
Yeah, you spent too much time crouched
slaving
down.
away.
If you look at the first slide, you can see it shows. I'll describe the picture for our listener. There's two photos here.
Oh.
Actually, Nick or Abby, do you want to describe the photos on slide 2?
Yeah, sure. So we got one where I think it's supposed to be a child with like a harness around his waist, and it's attached to a small minecart that is full of coal, and he is crawling on all fours through this little shaft to bring the coal, presumably out to the main area of the mine. Because I guess
so
they
you
had
can
the kids working in the little shafts.
Yeah, so you can kind of see in this picture like how small the working quarters were. You can't stand up straight. So this led to the spine defects because you're spending 12 to 18 hours a day, 6 days a week bent over. Your spine is not going to grow correctly.
Yeah.
I'd like
So
to
that
see
was a
how,
large
like
issue.
shoulders like adapted to that.
I don't think they did. I think they just had lifelong developmental
Do
issues.
you remember that guy on
Well,
TikTok?
you know, it,
that,
it
like-
didn't form it the good way, but like
Yeah, because they also would develop bow-legged and have chronic like liver, stomach, and renal diseases literally from being bent over all the time.
Mm.
damn.
Do you
So
remember
they
that guy on
weren't growing
TikTok
up
that like
healthy.
walked on his hands all the time just to see what it would do to his body?
Yes, he would do like 100 steps a day or something like that on all fours. And he got like really strong
He got
forearms.
huge forearms. It was crazy. Yeah.
I'll try to find.
But he was doing that in a very intentional, controlled
Yeah,
way.
he was able to stand up when he wanted to.
He wasn't spending 12 to 14 hours a
Building that
day
forearm strength.
in that.
I'll see if I
in
can
that
find one of
stance.
his videos to post.
Yeah.
Yeah, so being hunched over bad.
Yeah. We're not
Another
about
big
that.
issue, explosions and cave-ins were a common workplace hazard that killed lots of people, including the children. And then I found a paper that was kind of written during the time that also talked about the harmful mental developmental effects for the children because they were working alone in the dark for many hours a day. And the author of that paper called them, quote, almost idiotic. Like he was like, they aren't well-developed children, which makes sense. Like being alone all day in the dark probably
Yeah,
doesn't
they're not-
develop you well socially and
They're
mentally.
not getting socialized. They're not like practicing language. They're not
They're
doing
not
all of the
seeing the
important things
sun.
that children do. Yeah. Oh, that.
They're not walking on their legs.
Mm-hmm.
So the youngest member of the family had the role of trapper. So they were responsible for opening and closing the trap doors that controlled the airflow throughout the mine. And although it was not the most difficult job in the mine, they did have to sit in total darkness for up to or more than 12 hours a day. And if they fell asleep, they were risking the safety of everyone else working. And it's crazy because this was also like the youngest member of the family. So they're like, the person responsible for our oxygen intake is the 4-year-old / 5-year-old / 6-year-old.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Yeah,
And they're
imagine
like-
learning the concept of having enough air.
Yeah, and it's like if they fall asleep or get like distracted or whatever, my whole family dies.
Mm-hmm.
So no stress, no pressure.
Kid was probably smoking a cigarette the whole time too. That's what they did back
Tosses
in
it
the
down
day.
the shaft.
Well, probably pipe.
He was
probably
prepping for
smoking
the
pipe.
black lung he'll get later.
I mean, look, the coal dust is already going to do a number on him. You might as well smoke too. Why not?
True. At that point, it's like my lungs are already fucked.
Mm. What's
Yeah.
1% more
Adult
carcinogen
now.
in my lung?
I don't know how you don't go crazy sitting in the dark alone for 12 hours every day.
Yeah, it doesn't sound fun.
No. So the older children of the family had the role of hurrier. So along with the women of the family, they would pull the carts of coal along the roadway, like after they were filled with the coal up out of the mine. So that was the last picture that Nick was describing. And
Mm.
sometimes smaller children, if they had this role, they would also have a partner called the thruster, and they would like stand behind the cart pushing it. But working alone was obviously much more common because if you could have one person doing the job versus 2 people doing the job, you could like work more efficiently.
Yeah.
So they were like, obviously they're like, it's all about the money. How can we move the most coal
Mhm.
out of here as possible?
Right. Yeah.
Guess how much these carts of coal weighed though?
It's going to be like a couple 100 pounds. It's
Okay.
like a box full of rocks. And it's I'm going to go 300.
Okay. 300 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Abby, what's
Is
your
it
guess?
above or below that?
Oh, it's above.
500
Seems
pounds?
like it may be a lot above.
1,300 pounds.
Holy shit.
That's 600 kilograms. And while they were pulling the coal, it was at most 3 feet tall, or 120 centimeters, and at its shortest 60 centimeters tall, which is just over 2 feet. Is that right?
I'm like 60. Yeah, that's about 2 feet.
Yeah. So they're never standing up all the way.
Oh my god.
Then the oldest children in the family, so these are like your 18, 17, 16-year-olds, usually the boys, will work along with the men of the family as the getter, and they're the ones with the pickaxe at the seam of the mine, like actually collecting what they're mining. And that
Pickaxe.
is like the most like physically labored job, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And they're also the only job though that gets a candle and a lamp. So job benefits.
They got their pickaxe swinging from side to side.
Okay. So in
Another thing that
1842,
the children had to deal with, creepers.
yeah, yeah, they do
You know what?
creepers and
Probably they
skeletons,
did, though.
zombies. You know.
oh my god, I thought you meant creepers, like creepy men.
No, we were talking about.
And I was like, they
Yeah.
probably did have to deal with that.
No, we were making Minecraft jokes.
No, just the warden.
Oh, yeah, the warden.
I'm glad I'm glad Nick is here to understand Abby's joke because I didn't get it.
You didn't get my joke either. It's okay.
Yeah.
No, that was so over my head. I was like, I'll just smile and nod.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, need to be acknowledged.
All right. So in 1842, the Mine Act is passed, which bans the employment of boys under the age of 10 and all. Yeah, the 10 to 8, 7, 6-year-olds are out. And
That's
also all women and
wild.
girls are no longer allowed to work. in the mines, specifically with the women. I don't know why I didn't take any notes on this, but one thing I found was it was causing a lot of birth defects because the women were working in the mines, and like a lot of stillbirths, because pregnant women would work in the mines like basically up until they gave birth.
Yeah.
So they're having like a lot of like stillborn babies and like really bad birth defects. So I think that was mainly why they were like, okay, the women should no longer work here.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, we should give like proper like health and safety and like maternity leave, they were just like, you're banned. And then also under that act, they added that no one under the age of 15 was to operate like the machinery of the mine. So that's probably smart. And then 5 years later, the 10-Hour Act is passed, limiting work hours for women and children under 18 to 10 hours a day and 58 hours a week for like all industry at the time. So big, I mean, you gotta start somewhere.
Yeah.
You gotta start somewhere.
Yeah.
And then Gen
Thank
Z's
you,
out
unions,
here,
by the way.
Gen Z's out here like fighting for like the 3-day weekend. And they're like, can we just get under 12 hours a day?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about like prior to like this era, labor was way, way less structured and also less dangerous in general. Like most labor was farming. And like, I don't know.
Yeah, but I feel like until the industrial era, where it's like, let's make everything as dangerous as possible. Everything can cut off your limbs. Everything's toxic. Everyone's underpaid. There's a 16-year-old operating the heavy machinery. No one's licensed.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
then
I mean,
it's like,
yeah.
And I'll get to this later.
The chemicals and the heaviest equipment.
Yeah. This is the first time, like during this era, we get the first occupational diseases. So they were just like, it like completely flips where it's like, you are getting sick because of your job.
Yeah, I mean, there was a mix of like, nobody knew better, and also like, it was so insanely profitable.
Well, what's crazy is, there is like a small period of time where it's like,
if you ask the people who own the business, like, hey, why don't you go in the mines? They'd be like, no.
Yeah, and
like,
it's not like the business owners were liable if someone died on their job site. Like, who's going to make them pay? Like, it's like they just hire a new person for,
people at this
£6
time
an hour.
And like to some extent, still today, like the people that work for these major corporations are just seen as a commodity of the company. It's like, you are an infinite resource. There are always more people.
Yeah, and
there's really hardly any legislation like about the treatment of their workers, and sadly, if you don't have to treat people well by law, most people won't do it. So we'll see a lot of that here, because the next childhood job is chimney sweeping.
Ooh, the classic, the goat, the classic, you might say.
Chimney, baby.
Chimney. The goat of child jobs of.
Yeah, this is what really made me want to like look into this, because I don't remember what podcast, but it's like some true crime podcast that just covered like missing children that were later found like in chimneys, like hundreds of years later.
Oh my god.
So in the late 1600s, in response to the Great Fire of London, there were new regulations that required chimneys to be a lot narrower. So instead of them being like, oh, let's develop like new tools for these smaller chimneys, they were like, let's get smaller people into the chimneys. So they employed children to go into the chimneys. And
let's not make a tool that will be skinnier. Let's just get smaller people.
Spoiler alert, this is at the end of my notes, but like once they like outlawed children doing this, the solution was they made longer tools. They just
but
didn't
the long
start
tools
there.
are expensive.
Would it not be? No, but like it would be one use.
Exactly,
like,
and then you don't have to like. Well, I was gonna say then you don't have to pay like
you
someone else to do it. But like, spoiler alert, they're not paying these kids. So
yeah, I don't know if you know this, but it's pretty easy to like beat up a child or like extort or withhold things from a child. Like there was so much employer abuse as well happening because
Yeah, and like
what's a
Yeah.
7-year-old gonna do? You're 30, you know? Like if you just don't pay them, like
and like they are
Well, yeah, wait, what time, like, what year was this?
so the Victorian era starts in the
It's in the
1830s, so we're in like
1800s.
the 19th century.
you know.
Okay.
They narrow the chimneys in the 1600s. So I'm not sure exactly what year the children start sweeping,
Yeah.
but in the Victorian era is where we start to see like laws and stuff and like people are
Well,
talking about it.
I think the chimney
Okay.
sweeping started happening in the 1800s as well because prior to that, I don't think they were burning coal.
So it was not as much of an issue.
I think when you burn wood in a chimney, you end up with less like soot and buildup inside the chimney. I could be wrong about this, but and then they switched to coal when they discovered coal in Britain.
Yeah.
During the Industrial
Regardless,
Revolution.
it's a big hallmark of the Victorian era because it starts to gain like a lot of like media and press. Authors like Charles Dickens are writing like characters that work in chimney sweeping, and it's being really called out how exploitative this practice is towards young people. To highlight the exploitative nature, so the adult chimney sweep was called the master sweep, and he would find homeless boys or buy children from the orphanages and then call them his apprentice. But in actuality, they were just indentured servants that were forced to work dawn to dusk every day of the year except one day.
The Lord's Day. Amen.
And
No,
on that day,
not
we
one day
worship
a
God
week,
'cause he
one
is
day a
holy.
year. They got
Did
one
they get
day a year off. Yeah.
What, Christmas?
They got-
It must have been. It was Christmas, right?
No,
Or Easter.
I thought it was
Easter.
Christmas too. It's May Day, which is like a UK thing.
Yeah.
I think. I don't know. We don't do May Day here in the US. So
No, we don't. Leave
but
a
they get
comment.
May
Tell
Day
us
off.
what May Day is. Send us an email.
Yeah.
At
If you're a big May Day,
thispodcast@gmail.com.
that's it. That's our Instagram also. If you're a big May Day fan, let us know. But yeah, they got May Day off, so much must have been important, and they aren't getting paid either.
I'm
So
looking it up.
I don't know why
May
they.
Day isn't associated with like yelling Mayday as like a form of distress, right?
I think that's a different thing.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think where does that come from? Is it even spelled the same?
No, well, May Day is 2 words. The day, May.
Yeah, I
Day
meant the, like,
is
emergency.
2 days. The emergency is 1 word, I think. It's May Day, May Day.
Okay, I'm looking up the May Day etymology. Okay, it comes from a French word meaning "come and help me," and I will not attempt to pronounce the word in French.
Can you
But
put
it's
it in
like
the
an
chat?
M. Yeah, it's like an M apostrophe type word.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, I'll send it in the chat. Maybe.
apostrophe AIDER.
Yes.
Yeah, a day is. Oh, why didn't I clock? I didn't clock that. It's M apostrophe is what you put before something that has like a vowel, and a day is to help. So
Oh.
help
Yeah,
me.
so it's like
Damn.
it's spelled M apostrophe AIDEZ. So I'm assuming that's
Mayday.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
May Day. Yeah, it's May Day.
Monday.
Oh, wow.
Neat.
And then that became the English May Day in the 1920s.
Mayday.
Yeah.
Quick little etymology deep dive.
Sorry.
Yeah, so the chimney
Thanks for the sound effects,
sweeps.
Nick. I need a Nick soundboard.
I know. I wish Nick had the soundboard and not me because I can't talk and soundboard at the same
I should
time.
get one.
So yeah, the boys were typically aged 5 to 10 years old, but could be as young as 4 years old. And I think if you go to the next slide, there is a picture of a young boy chimney sweep, and he looks so sad and scared.
Dude, that is a toddler. Like, you are lowering a toddler
No,
down
he's
into a chimney.
so little, and he looks so sad. And it's this picture's got like the master sweep is like holding his hand up. It looks like he's like telling him something or being like, "Look here, boy."
Mm-hmm.
And it's just
I mean,
this
that-
young
that
kid
kid
on
looks
top of
like-
the chimney.
That kid should be on an iPad these days, you know?
Yes, that's an iPad kid
Watching Coco
forced in a
Melon.
chimney.
Not sweeping chimneys.
So basically, what would happen is the boys would climb up the chimney. So they would start at the bottom of the chimney, and they would have like brushes and metal tools to scrape the soot and tar from the chimney, and then they would slide back down from the top to collect all the soot, and then the farmers would sell that collection. No, the sweeps would sell to the farmers to use as fertilizer.
The soot?
But the soot and like tar and stuff, I don't know how fertilizer
As
works.
fertilizer?
I don't think that was good fertilizer. I'm going out on a limb here. I think
That doesn't mean they didn't do it.
I mean, okay. So wood ash, probably a decent fertilizer, right? A lot of the like potassium and stuff like that.
I mean, maybe they were
in the
still
wood ash.
burning wood. I don't really know.
I think they were mostly burning coal at this point.
Okay.
I mean, at least
Maybe
when this
coal was
photo
more
was taken, they
expensive?
were burning coal. But I think in the early days, they probably burned a lot of wood, and that was the wood ash fine as a fertilizer, right? The coal ash probably not very good as a fertilizer, and they probably figured that out after a couple
Right.
decades and then stopped.
Yeah, I was gonna say it might have taken them a while to really know.
Why is my corn black?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is really sad. Sometimes if the boys were like slow or reluctant to climb up the chimney or like to climb back down, I guess to climb up, because the master would light a torch in the fireplace to like encourage them to climb higher.
Wait, is
And-
that where the phrase like light a torch under his ass comes from?
Yes, that was gonna be my next point. Light a
No
fire
way.
under someone. Yeah, to like motivate them.
That's why.
I don't know if that's just like historical myth, but the source
Yeah.
I read claims it to be fact, and I like that. I think it makes sense, so I'm gonna. To me, that's fact.
Oh gosh, I hope I never make that like reference again.
I know it's crazy when you learn like the historical context of like a lot of common sayings. They have like really dark like histories.
Mm-hmm. And you, Mikael, we're from the Midwest. I'm like, I don't know what like.
Yeah, I
know
see like
what my
TikToks about that all
family
the time, where
says.
it's like you shouldn't say such and such anymore, and then they say why, and I'm like. People always be like, oh, not everything's about race or not everything's about such and such. And then literally everything comes back to it. And it's like that's what everything is built on.
Yeah.
Okay. So chimney sweeps, they didn't have any protective equipment at the time. So many, suffered lifelong health problems from inhaling the soot, and also the unnatural position of climbing the chimney, like the bent ankles and wrists.
Mm.
So they would develop, and these are young children, remember, so like not fully formed. Yeah,
Right.
Nick?
There's no way their
as
safety
they're
like.
freezing
There's no
right
way their
on.
safety equipment was like good either.
No, there was zero safety equipment. They were. You see this picture? Kids just in overalls, barefoot.
He's
The
got a
safety
rope.
equipment
He
was
has a
using
rope.
the child and not yourself.
But
The safety
all he
equipment
has
is
a
find an
rope.
orphan to do it for you.
Right.
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, stick an orphan down there. Who gives a shit?
Yeah. So, because of this, many had deformed ankles, knees, and spines. They also had lifelong inflammatory eye problems and respiratory illnesses. Okay, this is what I was talking about before. The chimney sweeps had the first recorded occupational disease. Fun medical fact. They would
So
develop.
did the black lung not, or did the mines come after?
I don't know if it's like a I think it's probably more like first recording of like a disease being related to an occupation, maybe not
The first
necessarily
time they
like,
attributed it to a job.
yeah, not necessarily like maybe they knew miners were sick or like something, but they were like this is the first like definitive line of like job to illness that's going on. That like medical people are writing down and like
Yeah,
saying
the first
this is
time
an
they said,
occupational
This
disease.
kid might be killing our kids, guys.
Yes. So they would develop what was like colloquially called chimney sweep cancer, and it was a painful and fatal cancer of the scrotum.
What?
Yeah.
I
So-
wonder if it's like if it has something to do with like I don't know. Never mind. I'm gonna throw an insane theory here.
Say
But
it.
like,
I
if
feel
you-
like you're right. I feel like you're on the right track.
Well, I mean, because if they're between 4 and 10, then they aren't really reaching like they're at 10. You're like maybe encroaching on like the beginning of puberty, but
Oh,
like,
you think maybe it's like because of the developmental time period?
well, yeah, because like that's where hormones are all going towards, pretty
I
much,
feel
or
like that's
what
a
a
good
lot of your
theory,
body's energy is
actually,
directed toward. But I think it's
because
too early for that then.
maybe because the primary theory at the time was that it was, and this there was a theory that was proposed in 1890 and then kind of disproven after. So I don't know if people kept theorizing, but it was that like because you're sweating so much, it's really hot that it's like the sweat is collecting like lower down.
Oh, when your pores are opened up more.
Yeah.
It's also, yeah, a
But
sensitive area. A lot
but
of
it could also be
orifices
like
for
maybe like a
people, you know?
combination of both. Like it's also like a developmental time. It's a lot of sweat collecting in one area.
Yeah.
But basically, um, it was a squamous cell carcinoma of the skin of the scrotum, first identified in 1775, and it was primarily contracted by sweeps that had been in contact with soot since early childhood.
Hmm.
And the median onset of the disease was around 37 years old, but there were kids as young as 8 years old diagnosed.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Um, and then other workplace like occupational hazards. Of course, sweeps often suffocated inside the chimneys or just became stuck in some capacity and were unable to climb up or down and then died from being stuck. Other boys died from falling. And I saw that a lot got burn injuries. And I was like, are we not putting the fireplace out before we do this?
The chimney might still be really hot.
Yeah.
Would be my
Maybe,
guess.
but like, then wait. I guess, yeah, they don't.
But the
care
house
about
is going to
kids.
get cold.
Yeah, I was
And
about
yeah,
to
they
say,
don't
I
care
think the
about the
burn
kid.
injuries might have been maybe more intentional as like a punishment if they weren't doing that.
Maybe.
Okay.
Because that was my next thing is that the treatment of these kids were really bad. They're obviously not well taken care of. They're like
Yeah.
orphans used as labor. So the children were typically underfed and malnourished, and they slept in cold basements, and they would use the soot sacks as blankets at night. So then in 1840, so like leading up to this, people are kind of starting to talk about like this industry being like really exploitative and like these kids being in danger, and there's like various authors like writing about it, and trying to bring attention to it. So in 1840 they passed a law raising the minimum age to 16, but it's like largely ignored by people because it's not really reinforced. So it's like the law's on the books, but people are like, whatever.
There's no
What are you-
reinforcement.
What are they
Yeah.
going to do about it?
Yeah.
So the last chimney sweep dies in 1875. His name is George Brewster. He dies at 12 years old after becoming stuck in the chimney. And people do notice that he's stuck, and they knock down a wall to rescue him, but he still dies shortly after. So in September of that same year, they finally pass a bill outlawing the use of all child chimney sweeps. And today, England continues to honor the loss of chimney sweeps on May Day, the one day a year they didn't have to work.
Oh.
So I don't know how big that recognition actually is in the UK. Like, if it's, you know how like we have all those like holidays on the calendar that no one talks about? But I like to think that people are thinking about all
I
these
think they get
kids.
May Day off. I think May Day's like their Labor Day. I think it's like the day that like the
I for sure...
Yeah.
There during May Day?
I was going to say, I for sure think they get it off. I feel like I remember that happening while we were in London.
Yeah.
I just don't really know the significance, and I didn't hear anyone mention a chimney sweep.
But we
So-
left in June, right? Or we went there. No, we went
Yeah,
there.
we
It
were.
would have been in May.
Yeah, we were there
right?
during May,
Yeah, we had a. I'm sure we had a May Day.
and I remember we were there during two holidays. I just don't necessarily remember. One was the Queen's
Where was
birthday.
the Queen dying, right? Oh. I thought
What-
it was the
what-
Queen
yeah,
Opposite.
dying. Oh.
No,
what
she was
the
still alive.
Platinum or something? I can't remember what it
Yeah,
was.
it was like the Platinum Jubilee or something.
Yeah.
Whatever. Some
Okay.
bullshit. Yeah, sorry.
So I guess if you don't want a coal mine and you don't want a chimney sweep,
Because you had a
And
choice
you're-
of whether or not you wanted to do it.
and you're 10
Yeah,
years
right.
old and have no money, Um, Another option is you could scare away the birds on the farm. You could work as a professional scarecrow. And although the pay is typically lower, I guess not compared to the chimney sweeps who aren't getting paid, but although they're getting paid less than some of these like city jobs, the conditions are a little bit better. They're like outside of the city, there's more like fresh air, there's less like occupational hazards. Um, the biggest occupational hazard was really that the kids are often lonely, like they're the only ones in the field, and like they're just out in the weather, so it can be like really hot or really cold.
Yeah, you
Um,
probably
Yeah,
get
our
some
crows
hypothermia,
are
probably
crows
some
are
heat stroke.
aggressive. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if like the birds themselves were like a big hazard. I didn't see anything about that. I guess it's like possible.
Nah,
Like, I'm sure a
probably
kid got
not.
attacked by a bird at some point.
Yeah,
But it was
it's probably
mostly just that they were
happened,
like working long hours alone outside. Um,
Mhm.
so like whatever the weather is at that time, and then like you're not working with anyone else, and you're like a kid,
Mhm.
and like important like developmental years of like talking to people and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Well, and this is work that would have been done like not by a child in the past, because a lot of people like moved into the cities in this time because of the opportunities that
mhm.
industrialization created.
Yeah,
So
there's like
like
all
all
these
of
like
these
big businesses popping up.
yeah, and as agriculture gets industrialized too, like all of these agricultural workers, all these farm laborers are no longer needed. They move to the city to get jobs in the factories, and now there's like just the kids left out there, and
hmm
they're filling all these roles that would have been taken by an adult in the past.
Yeah. So, I mean, good news is they are getting paid. They're making 5 pence a day. 5 pence is 1/100th of a pound. And I did my best to convert this to USD today, which was like a lot of conversions because I was going like pence to pounds to 1800s to USD
Mhm.
to 2025. But I think it would be like making $1.25 a day today. So same purchasing power as making $1.25 every day.
Oh, it's
And
abysmal.
how many hours did you say it was?
I didn't find a good hourly count. I'm assuming it's the typical 12-hour shift, at least until our 10-hour law
Yeah,
is
it's probably
passed.
down to dusk.
And then you're still expecting like people to like follow the laws like out in rural countrysides where there's probably no.
Not being enforced at
It probably
all.
depends on how good your boss is.
Yeah, there's one constable in the 100-mile radius.
Yeah. Um. So your next option is you could maybe be a rat catcher, which I did not know. There is a lot of lore on these UK rat catchers that I didn't even fully get into. I was like, this could be an episode in itself. So it's common knowledge that even in the Victorian times, people know rats carry a lot of diseases. And London, like all major cities at the time, is just completely overrun by the rodent population. One of Queen Victoria's rat catchers was quoted as saying, "One pair of rats with their progeny will produce in 3 years no less than a number of 646,808 rats, which will consume day by day as much food as 646,808 men, and the rest will starve." So then I tried to fact check this. I was like, is that really how many rats come from one pair of rats? And from an exterminating website, I found that 2 rats will turn into 1,250 rats in 1 year. So I was like, if it keeps, because it's like a factorial, right? Because like then
Yeah.
each rat can
Then the
breed
pups
and make
breed,
more
yeah.
rats.
Yeah, it's
So I was like, in
exponential.
3 years, that seems like a relatively okay assessment.
You said 3 years
Um,
or 1 year?
The Royal Rat Catcher claimed that in 3 years there'd be 646,808 rats from every
Mhm.
2 rats. So
Okay.
that's a lot of rats.
There's a lot of rats.
And rat catching was actually like a really coveted job. Like The dream would be to go from chimney sweep and work your way up to rat catcher if we're setting goals for ourselves. Because it doesn't have a lot of the same health risks as like working in the mines and like chimney sweeping and whatnot. They also are getting like paid a little bit more. The problem is there's like a higher startup investment. So a lot of the rat catchers were older children.
You need rat catching equipment.
You need rat catching equipment. You need
So if you survived in the mines, you might be able to be a rat catcher.
Yeah, you might be able to buy arsenic and a ferret if you're lucky.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can work as a rat catcher. So yeah, the deratting English manors and businesses was extremely lucrative. A child could earn between 2 shillings and £1 a day, like for each manor or business. Yeah. So
that's a lot of money, actually.
Yeah, 2 shillings is 24 pence. So you can make like a little more than $4 per house or business if you can like exterminate the rats. So you can make pretty good money. The reason everyone's not doing it is just because like you have to have your own equipment,
right?
Which is like a big startup investment. So a lot of rat catchers like to like
you have to get paid in a different job to afford it.
Exactly. So like I said, it's like there's older children who are probably working jobs to earn money to be able to buy things to work better job. Yay. Yeah, so one of their like business tactics was to claim to have like better secret poisons, but in reality all rat catchers were pretty much using arsenic at the time. It was relatively cheap and like pretty effective. They would mix it with some kind of food to attract the rats, and now you have a dead rat. A lot of rat catchers would also use the ferret/terrier method. So the ferret is able to like sniff out and find the rats, bring them out of hiding, and then the terriers would catch and kill the rats. And this was like such a thing at the time that they started having like rat fights, basically. Like, so people would like bet on how long it would take a terrier to like take down a rat. So it's kind of like a chicken fighting or like dog fighting scenario, but it ends with the death of the rat. And another thing I found, like, that having like pet rats became really popular at the time. So it's people started like trying to figure out how to like catch the rats but like leave them alive. So there were like people that started developing different kinds of traps, and like some people started getting really good at catching live rats. So there's like been one guy that becomes the British royal rat catcher, and he's like the best rat catcher. And that's where I was like, there was so much lore on this. Like this guy has like a whole, yeah, he's got like his whole story. So I was like, that in itself could be an episode, this royal rat catching guy and like all of his traps. So the next thing I want to talk about is matchmaking as a profession. And let me tell you, my dumb ass thought that these emaciated, like soot-covered children were setting people up on dates. These were...
I was just gonna say, why would anyone do this?
I know. I was like, sounds like a great job. Why are they testing people on the street?
They're making matches.
They're making matches. Yep, Nick is on board. They are cutting up pine and dipping the ends in sulfur and phosphorus to sell as matches. Mm-hmm. They are not matchmaking. They are. And I'm
sure they're wearing proper PPE and really, I'm sure they're handling those chemicals so safely.
The proper PPE is grit and hard work.
So, oh wait, go to the next slide. There was a picture of a painting of a rat catcher. I mean, of a scarecrow that I think you guys might want to see.
Is that him by the fire?
Is that a fire? I don't know. It's a little blurry.
I think there's supposed to be a little fire there, but yeah.
This kid looks rather distressed in this painting.
He does look distraught. He's not having a good time. That's for sure.
No.
Looks like he just smelled something really bad.
No. All right, and then the next slide will be our slide about these matchmakers. So, as of 1897, there are over 1,400 matchmakers under the age of 18 working in the UK. Those that were 14 or under would make a weekly wage of 4 shillings. However, oftentimes the workers did not take home their full wage, and I'll get more into that later. So many of the matchmakers developed the occupational disease phosphorus necrosis of the jaw, which slang name, this is fun, Fossy Jaw.
Did they actually call it that?
Yeah, they called it Fossy Jaw.
New drag name.
Yes! Fossy Jaw goes so
On
hard.
the stage, Miss
Mhm.
Fossy Jaw.
Miss Fossy Jaw, lip sync for
Oh, I hate
your
that.
life. So due to the inhalation of the phosphorus vapors that were highly toxic, particularly when heated, would lead to osteonecrosis or death of bone tissue, which, okay, this is a big side tangent. I never before thought of calling bone tissue, but then I was like thinking about it and I was like, yeah, duh, like,
Cells, tissue.
yeah, tissues are just a network of cells that work together, and bones are a network of cells doing bone functions. I just like, I don't know, I always like, bones in my head are like fingernails and like hair, like just dead hard things, and not like this fully functioning organ that is like producing cells and like is an alive thing. So I was like, yeah, it's bone tissue, I guess. I
Yeah.
never thought about that.
I saw a really cool video this week about how birds use their bones as like air sacs. And this thing happened one time where some guy found a bird with a broken wing, like really bad, like the bone was sticking out and broken. And there's like a protruding piece of it. And so he's like, okay, well, I'm going to put this bird out of its misery. I'm going to drown it. Tries to drown it. It can breathe through its bones. Like,
Hell
the
yeah.
air can actually
Hell
move
yeah.
through the bones because they're hollow and into the bird's air sacs and then be pushed out of the air sacs through their lungs and then out. It's like,
That would be freaky to discover.
I just-
I'd be like, this is not
Yeah.
a bird.
Science is magic.
Mm-hmm.
Magic is just science we don't understand yet. I love it. I've
Do
been
you think that
so...
bird knew it could breathe through its bones, or it was like, holy
It
I
was
think
probably
they
just like,
started
I'm
doing
being
it.
fucking drowned right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
and
they
it
just
was
started
like,
doing it.
why haven't I died yet?
Right?
I've been so into
That's what
birds
the dude was
recently, I
thinking.
really
He's like,
wanna do-
why won't this fucking bird die? What the hell, man?
And the bird's like,
I
why am I not dying? Yeah, I want to do a whole episode just on ravens and crows. I love ravens and crows. They are so cool.
The
I don't want to talk
corvids.
about it too much right now. Yeah, corvids. I don't want to get too much into it right now because I don't want to spoil the episode. But they are some of the coolest like creatures
They're cool
in
birds.
the world.
Big
They're
fan
so
of birds.
smart. They
Mhm.
have such like weird adaptations. I love them. I would love to befriend a crow one day. I just haven't yet. Okay.
Nick, I feel like you would train a crow. Like, leave little presents
I
out
would
for
love to train a crow. I think that'd be so much fun.
I think this was like a Reddit story once where the person was like, maybe it was like some kind of animated asshole. It was like during COVID and they kept leaving like presents for a crow. So they got a relationship with a
Yes.
crow, and then they would like go on walks and the crow would follow it. And then they eventually had a whole flock of crows
Mhm.
that would like follow it. And so the neighbors were upset because they were like a menacing person walking with like a flock of crows whenever they were
Wouldn't the crows
outside.
also attack the neighbors too?
Yeah, because
I
like
think
if like
so.
neighbors came onto the property, they were like attacking them. So they were like, "Am I an asshole for accidentally forming a crow army?"
There's stories of people
It's too
like
powerful.
feeding crows too, and then the crows start bringing them gifts.
That's
Like,
my
people
that's
get
like
brought,
on my
like,
bucket
20
list.
bucks
That's
or
all I
whatever.
want. That's all I want in life is like a little crow friend that brings me little shiny objects.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if I could get a pigeon to do that. Because I have like a little
pigeons
pigeon
aren't
nest.
smart
Pigeons
enough.
are
Pigeons are
dumb.
really
Yeah.
stupid.
But pigeons, because this would also be an episode, is I want to do a pigeon episode because they used to be so smart. So I feel like that's in there somewhere. We just domesticated them and abandoned them, and it's not their
Well,
fault.
there's multiple different species of pigeon, but yeah.
That's true. The New York pigeon's a dumb motherfucker. So
The rock dove. Yeah. The American passenger pigeon, there used to be like 2 billion passenger pigeons or something ridiculous like that.
The modern
And
cell
there's extinct
phone.
now. Yeah.
okay.
R.I.P.
Anyway, let's
R.I.P.
get
the
back.
passenger
Let's get back to
pigeon.
matchmaking. Let's get back to these emaciated children.
Yeah, put a pin in the crows.
Yeah, so they're making four trillions a week. They're not taking a lot of it home. They're getting Fossy jaw. Okay, so the disease begins with like a toothache and flu-like symptoms, and then as it progresses, you get tooth loss, abscesses, gum swelling, and then ultimately necrosis of the tissues, and then it's 20% of cases death. Okay, then this is a little bit of a tangent, but it felt so important to talk about in this context. And I had never heard of this before, and maybe that's just like my dumb American education. But the story that I'm about to tell you, quick little side story, it's basically like the British equivalent of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. Like, in my view of it, it's like these kids are probably getting asked about this on their like a push equivalent exam. So it's like I couldn't search matchmaking without this coming up. So I was like, I have to talk about this. So the Bryant and May matchmaking company forms in 1842, and they're selling tens of millions of boxes a day at their height. And they employ nearly 5,000 people across the UK. So they're a big deal. The workers work 14 hours a day, but like I said before, they're often not taking home their full wages. They're fined for various misconduct while on the job, including dirty feet, even though many of them could not afford shoes and they're working in a factory, dirty workstations, alleged tardiness. The women also had to pay the boys at the factory that would bring them the frames to like fill with the matches, and then they also had to supply their own supplies on the job, like their own glue and their own brushes.
Oh my god.
So like they have a relatively okay wage, but they're not getting their entire wage.
Yeah. It's like that SpongeBob, that one SpongeBob episode where like Mr. Krabs is like taking money off their paychecks for like breathing and like loitering and like standing.
Literally, that's this because like there wasn't like written out rules. Like foremen would just decide like, oh, you're breaking a rule, I'm deducting this amount. Like, and there was like no one that they could complain to about it. So like there wasn't like a management where they could go and be like, they keep saying that my feet are too dirty, but I don't have shoes, so, and I don't have running water, so I don't know what the fuck you want me to do.
Literally
so
any governmental protections whatsoever. Like they didn't.
Exactly. So they're just kind of like, all right, well, the company also is aware of the dangers of Fossy jaw. So this is what I was saying before. It's like there might be this small time period where companies like don't understand the occupational dangers, but then they often there's a long time period where they do know it's dangerous, but there's no like financial incentive for them to do anything about it. And it's like, again, you're just a commodity to this company. If you die or you're sick, there's someone else that I can hire to do it. So
there's actually a financial incentive to not do anything, because not doing anything costs
it's like,
nothing.
why would I pay money or lose money to make sure you don't get sick, when if you do get sick, I can hire someone else to do the same job? So they're aware that there's dangers, but they would just tell, if like an employee started complaining of toothache, they would tell them they needed to immediately have the tooth removed or they would be fired. So I think they were just trying to like, if you're sick, you're going to be sick and not working here.
Yeah.
So that I don't have to be responsible for what happens.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it wasn't, I mean, they weren't putting kids in chimneys, and then when they died, they were like, not our fault. Like, I think from the beginning, they've known that children probably shouldn't be doing such horrifying labor. Again, like their perspective, it's not horrifying, it's just what they do.
Yeah, and it's like, if you already don't have a lot of money, you're not just gonna quit and be like, oh, I guess I'll chimney sweep, or I guess I'll coal mine.
Yeah.
So
Well, yeah,
you're
and
in
if
like
you're a child and you've worked your entire life, you don't know what ethical working
true, that's the other
conditions
side.
are.
It's like it's always been like this. I don't know that it could be better. So they're having terrible working conditions. So social activists, fuck, I wrote down their names. These gotta be typos because these do not look like names. Um, I'll find out their. Fuck, I really want to say their names because they're two badass women.
Mm.
And I was like, I'll post them, but I feel like they deserve to be said. So let me see if I can find their names real quick. Matchmaking strike, 1888.
Well, Nick, did you also get the humor in that?
Yeah,
I didn't hear
the
what you said.
matchmaking strike, like striking a
Oh,
match.
hey, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Okay. The social activists were named Annie Besant. I hope I said that right. Besant. And Herbert Burrows. Burrows, Burrows.
Burrows usually.
So what they did, yes, these two baddies, they published an article on the unfair treatment that was happening at the Bryant and Mays matchmaking company in 1888. And then the company asked the employees to sign a paper contradicting the statement, basically being like that what they said is not true. And obviously the employees refused to sign it because they're saying the truth. And then they fired one of the employees on what they said was allegedly unrelated circumstances. And this set off a strike in the company. So 1,400 women and girls refused to work. And by the end of the first day, they agreed to hire back the employee. But the women had additional demands. They were like, no, we don't just want her hired back. They had like a bunch of concessions basically. And at the top of their list was like, they didn't want their pay to be deducted anymore. They're like, this is unfair. We want to take home our full wages. There were a lot of things that they wanted, but that was the main one. By the fourth day of the strike, the entire factory had stopped working, and they ultimately get Parliament and the London Trade Council involved in the issue. And after 2 weeks, the strike ends, and the company agrees to stop deducting fines from their wages for misconduct and materials. They were also now set up a system to allow companies to give complaints directly to management instead of the foremen, who were the people deducting from the wages. And then the last thing that they got was that meals were to be held in another room so that their food wasn't contaminated with the phosphorus that they were working with. So kind of assessing the phosphorus situation, but they were like still using the chemicals, but it was a start. So
Well, yeah, at least they were like, I'm not eating near that.
Yeah. I'm sure that was like, they had like a big ask and that was what they were able to get. Like that's how arguments work. But the big like important historical context of this was that following the strike, the Union of Women Matchmakers is formed, and this is the largest union of women and girls in the country, and it inspired many industries across the UK to unionize their workers. So it was a big deal because they were like, it was the start of people realizing that they had like a collective power and were able to make demands to their company and didn't just have to settle for what they decided to give them.
Yeah.
So a lot of badass women making moves in the Victorian era.
Hell yeah. We love women. We love unions.
So
that's most of it.
Women's unions.
I only love two things in life.
Pretty much it.
Unions.
Yeah.
Hey, if there's two things I could get behind, it's women and unions. So if you weren't dying from occupational hazards as a child, there was a high chance you were dying from disease and illness in general. Typhoid fever was a really big issue at the time due to poor sanitation and limited access to clean water. Typhoid is caused by the bacteria Salmonella typhi, and I think actually it's Salmonella type B. Drag name.
No, it's a drag duo. Salmonella and typhi.
It's spread through the contamination of food and water with urine and feces. So it's just like you have bad city infrastructure and like people are living in close quarters. Yeah. There were an estimated 16,000 cases of typhoid each year in Victorian times, including Prince Albert, Queen Victoria's husband, who dies of typhoid fever.
And whom the piercing is named after.
Is it actually named after him?
I think so, yeah.
Nick, I'm going to need you to fact check that. Why? Did he have one?
Alleged. I think the rumor is that he had one, and that's why it's named after him.
Okay, icon. Prince Albert is a good drag king name. So basically, what happens is the bacteria is able to survive the acid in the stomach, and then it penetrates through the interstitial epithelium of the stomach. So that's basically like the layer of cells that lie in the stomach it's able to pass through, and then it spreads through your lymphatic system and bloodstream. So it's like this whole body illness.
It seeps into your entire body.
Yeah. So symptoms include fever, fatigue, nausea, abdominal pain, constipation, or diarrhea, and rash. Alternate one or the other, and this leads to largely intestinal damage, sepsis, heart inflammation, kidney and bladder infections, meningitis, and psychiatric complications, and in really bad cases, death.
Okay, but also like the symptoms you listed sound like something a child of that age could experience any kind of day, and they'd be like, "You're fine."
Yes, for sure. I think because likely if you're gonna die from typhoid, you're gonna die from dehydration, because you're basically gonna like shit yourself to death, more or less.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna shit out all the water in your body and die.
Lord knows you can't afford a water fetcher, you know.
No, and I think not that people don't get typhoid today. It's still like a common issue in underdeveloped countries. Like when you don't have like a clean water source, it's a big issue. But because we have limited knowledge of like sanitation and bad city design at the time, just a lot of people are contracting it, and like more people
and no
contracting it, you're more likely to die. And that was the other thing. No antibiotics yet, so the treatment of it is not so great.
Right. Exactly. The minute you have a sickness, you are on your deathbed.
And although typhoid is bad, you're not as likely to die from typhoid as you are to die from, say it with me, scarlet fever. So scarlet fever is a highly infectious disease, and it affects mostly children. It's caused by the bacteria Streptococcus pyogenes. I think I said that right. And it's spread through respiratory droplets, which we know how bad a respiratory illness can be to the population. Symptoms sound really like adjacent to strep throat. It's like a similar bacteria. So that includes sore throat, headache, fever. You get a red like sandpaper like rash, which is where it gets its name, swollen glands, and broken blood vessels. And this often leads to pneumonia, liver damage, and toxic shock. And scarlet fever is the leading cause of death for children and infants during the Victoria era. For one example, Archibald Tate, he's the Archbishop of Canterbury, and he loses 5 of his 7 children to scarlet fever.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Before
back when they still let archbishops have kids.
Do archbishops not have kids now?
No.
Is that like a religious position?
So in the Catholic Church, if you're a priest, you're not allowed to have, you're supposed to be celibate. I think in the Anglican Church, you actually can, which this would be Anglican because they're English. So I think they could actually get married. Yeah.
Well, he had, whether or not he's married, I didn't look into. He did.
Wow.
Father 7 kids.
He sure did. He was probably married.
Probably, but sadly, 5 of those kids do die of scarlet fever. And before the invention of antibiotics, quarantining was their like main solution to the issue. It was the best way to prevent the spread of disease, and they would also just try to frequently like change like their bedding and stuff. So they did have like some idea maybe of like how contamination worked.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't think I include this image, but I did see like one image and it was like a sign in a window that was like, keep away quarantining scarlet fever. And it felt very kind of like COVID reminiscent of like, don't come to my room.
Right.
Something else you might die from if you're a kid in the Victorian era is the whooping cough. Before Woo! Before the invention of the whooping cough vaccine in the 50s, the illness affected thousands of people every year, but was particularly dangerous for babies and children at the time, just because of their weaker immune systems.
Mm-hmm.
And the disease is characterized by coughing fits that end in gasps or whoopings of air, is where it gets its name. And before the discovery of the bacteria that causes the disease, one home remedy was to dissolve salt of tartar, which is potassium carbonate, into cochineal in boiling water, and then to either rub it on the skin or swallow it. And I tried to look into like why they thought this would help. I was like, what does potassium have to do with it? And like cochineal is just a red dye. Like it's the, if you've heard of this before, you have like the red bug that they crush up to like make red dyes. That's basically what it is. And I could not find anything. I don't know why they thought this would work. I don't know if it did actually help alleviate the symptoms at all. But that was a little home remedy you might try if you got the whoop.
Yeah.
And the last disease I want to talk about is rickets. I think there is a picture on one slide here.
The very curvy one.
Yes. So rickets is a disease caused by deficiency of calcium and vitamin D. So a lot of children in the Victorian era of like poorer, like lower socioeconomic classes got rickets because there is a lack of knowledge of the importance of sunlight and development. There's also really heavy smog at the time, so people aren't necessarily getting sunlight anyway.
That's
and
why
there's a lot.
There's
Go ahead,
a
Nick.
quick little tangent. So there's this moth species that lived in England, and it had like two morphs, right? There's the dark gray
Oh
morph
yeah,
and
I
the
know
white
about
morph.
the moths.
Oh, you know about the moth. This is a very, very
You can't
standard
study biology and not know
like,
about the
case
moths.
Study. Yeah.
Yeah, tell our listeners about these moths.
Yeah, so there's this moth species that was native to England, and they started burning all this coal, right? And one of the moths is like a dark color, and one of them is a light color, meant to blend in with like tree bark. And during the time period that they were burning all the coal for factories and cities for heat and everything, the smog and all the like coal dust and like ash settling on trees like made the trees way darker. So the dark color moth became like way more common in nature over, just a few decades, because predators couldn't see them as well as they could see the light colored ones, because all of a sudden
they had
the
like
light colored moths stood out against the like grimy trees.
Yeah, they had like
everywhere.
a sudden like adaptive camouflage to their environment because it was so polluted at the time.
Yeah. Wild.
Yeah, a really cool like how environment affects, like how human changing of environment affects population of species. Yeah,
Even in
fun
like really
example.
indirect ways, not even like hunting or fishing, because it's a moth. Like no one was hunting the moth. They're like,
no, it was just
doing
like,
anything with the moth.
it
just
is
was a
grayer now. And I always think of, and I rewatched this movie recently, The Corpse Bride, like how gray and dreary London looks. I'm always like, the black moths are thriving right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So back to rickets. So they don't have a lot of sunlight.
Rickets. Sorry.
Yeah, there's not a lot of sunlight, and vitamin D is like obviously important to bone health. And then there's also a lack of access to nutritious foods, especially at lower socioeconomic classes. So this leads to bone deformities, and like a big hallmark of rickets is the bow legs, and then it makes it difficult for children to walk. So you often see them like with the crutches. Um,
If you've ever seen the spooky, scary skeletons animation, when the like bones are all bendy and the skeletons are like doing their thing, that's what this kid's skeleton looks like right now.
I was gonna say, Nick, do you want to describe the photo? But that was a perfect description. Yeah, it's literally like all the bones are wavy.
Mm-hmm. It's like if you
Every single one.
if you got put in the thing that makes your bones wiggly, and all of a sudden you had, or like if your bones were like spaghetti that's been cooked for like 2 minutes, you know?
Yeah, like this skeleton looks like it's like mid-dance move. Like not a single bone is straight.
Yeah, I was trying to pull up my lecture notes on rickets, but my osteology lecture I did all handwritten.
Mm-hmm.
But I have my friends. Well, I had most of you like drawing and structures and like.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. I was like, damn, too bad you don't have this archived digitally.
Right. Yeah, I'll scan it next time. But in my forensic anthropology lecture, which like was a much quicker like overview of some of these diseases, my notes are so bad, but it says softening in the bones of a child resulting from deficiency or impaired metabolism of vitamin D. And I'm also like, these lecture notes are so simple. Very common in developing countries. One of them, I just put sunlight.
Yeah, and well,
Sunlight.
when you're working from dawn to dusk, and you're in a chimney the whole time, and you're putting weird pressures on your bones, and you have rickets, it's like
or
all
you're
of a sudden, like,
in the
you're
mines.
getting noodle arms, or in the mines, or if you had the night shift at the scarecrowing, or
So these
whatever.
Pale, emaciated, wavy-boned, soot-covered children.
Right.
Put that kid in a chimney ASAP.
Right, yeah, they could do it.
Get that
Bones are
man
soft.
behind the machinery.
Make him crawl in there. He's all soft. He can squeeze through.
So it says the reason it's soft is because the absence of the active vitamin D results in hypocalcemia.
Oh, so the opposite of hypercalcemia.
Yeah, lack
Not
of-
enough calcium.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
So
hypothermia, not enough.
I guess.
Not enough.
So my understanding is like, and correct, maybe Abby, that vitamin D plays some part in like calcium development or like calcium storage, calcium usage. Do you know?
I believe it helps metabolize vitamin D, or that's what vitamin D gets metabolized into.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but they must have
Beats
some
me.
link then.
Yeah. Bones, calcium, calcium and vitamin D definitely have some interplay there. I forget exactly what it is, and I know there's sunlight involved too, but
Dude, you know what would be a good episode?
Google
Big Milk.
AI.
Big Milk.
Because Big Milk was going so hard when we were kids.
We could do a Big Milk episode.
Okay, let me write this down.
Big
Someone write down Big
Milkers.
Milk.
I'll put Big Milkers in the...
No, because you were going to be the one to misinterpret that.
But Nick does an episode on big titties.
It's like, guys, in that next episode, I know exactly what I'm doing. I got the perfect
All about
note.
just images of different tits.
Oh no. It says
Reviewing.
vitamin D. Vitamin D helps the body absorb calcium.
There it
Okay,
is.
so it's like you don't have enough vitamin D. Your body's not absorbing the calcium. Your bones need the calcium to be strong. Your bones aren't strong. They get all noodly.
And your body needs sunlight in order to produce vitamin D in your skin, right?
Yeah.
Something like that? Yeah.
Yeah, they're definitely interconnected. Like I said, the kids aren't spending a lot of time outside. If they are outside, there's not a lot of sun because we're burning a lot of coal and it's covering the sun. So
I can't remember if one of the individuals in my sample when I did research had rickets, but I remember at one point holding like a rib from someone who had rickets. And it's like, I mean, you could see in the photo, like it looks like a collarbone flipped.
oh, interesting.
Yeah,
It's got like a big curve in it.
Yeah, it's just like.
I dissected a mouse like not femur, tibia today.
Mhm.
That was crazy looking. It was like so flat. It was like paper flat. And then it had like this extra piece that came off like super long and like skinny that I've never seen in a mouse before. That's all I gotta say about that. It just looked weird.
Interesting.
Are you
Yeah.
sure it didn't fragment?
What is fragmenting?
Like,
Oh, like the bone split?
mhm.
See, maybe,
Or
but
it
usually
could have been like a cartilaginous like metal that was like broken.
maybe, but I've just never seen it before. Like maybe I
I
split
don't
it,
know
which
mouse
is
bone anatomy, so
yeah,
I have
maybe
no
I split it
idea.
like which is why it was so flat. But usually, like I feel that I split it, which is
Right.
always like fuck.
Well, you would see the rest somewhere, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I like didn't feel that I like broke it or like saw any like fragments anywhere.
Hmm.
It was just super flat. And then like sometimes there's like you got like your leg, right? And then over by the ankle there's like this little piece that is like coming off sometimes.
Mhm.
And it was like it was gonna be that, but it was super long and like connected to the knee. And it didn't look like it had like any bone marrow or anything inside of it. Like it was super white. It wasn't like the red, like filled with shit kind of color. So I don't know.
How old was the mouse?
Oh, I don't have no idea. I didn't ask any questions. I just sat down and started cutting.
That's fair. I don't know, like the mouse's like bone development cycle, but maybe it was like cartilage that was ossifying. It was in the middle.
Maybe. I like pointed it out to the guy whose project it was. I was like, this leg looks really weird. And he was like, I wonder if he broke it at some point.
Oh, okay.
But I felt like if it was a break, like why would it grow like an extra part? Like it would just be like kind of curvy or something. I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes bodies do weird shit though.
They were
Yeah.
like obese mice, so maybe it had something to do with just like the extra weight on its body. I don't know.
Mhm.
But yeah, I've never seen that before. Okay, so you're a Victorian child. You just made your $1 a day or whatever it is inside the mines. You luckily didn't get scarlet fever, and now you're ready for some leisure time. So I'm gonna give us really quick to round it out 3 possible pastimes that you could pick to spend as your Victorian child.
On your 4 hours off of work.
You're 4 hours off of work before you need to go back the next morning.
With 12 pence, with 1 pence in your pocket.
Yeah. So children games at the time were often very morbid because of the high mortality rate at the time. Kids were just exposed to death a lot more than I think kids now are. One popular game kids did was they held mock funerals for their dolls. This was like such a popular pastime that toy companies started to produce like funeral themed items for the dolls. So they would have like come out with like mourning dresses, like black attire, and miniature coffins for these dolls. I think if you go to the next slide, you can see a picture of one of these. Just a little mini,
cat.
just a mini. Oh.
It's kind of cute.
Oh, hello, Sadie.
It is kind of like if I found that at the Goodwill, I'm buying it.
Oh.
I don't know if one of you wants to give a little description for our audio listener. I mean, it's basically a coffin.
It's a baby coffin. It's a
It's
doll-sized coffin with a doll in it. And
Yeah.
It's got a little window in the front too, so you can see the face.
Yeah, so they would like hold these like mock funerals for their children. I saw that there was like one Charles Dickens book where like the character stumbles upon children like holding a funeral in like a graveyard, which like that would be so creepy to stumble upon. But was popular enough at the time that like industries were taking note and like making themed toys. And obviously like these are wealthier kids that would have access to these toys. Another popular game was called Apple and Candle. Very original. I think there's an image on the next slide for you guys. But basically, it was a stick strung up horizontally with an apple on one end, and then there's a lit candle on the other. And it's like an apple bobbing scenario. So you're trying to like jump up and bite the apple. But if you miss, the risk is that you get burnt in the face by a lit candle.
No way. That's insane.
There's no way that practically worked out. The way I'm
It's
looking
probably
at
like
like
spinning
the...
and shit, right?
Yeah, like you spin the stick, right?
How
And then
does
you
the
try
candle
to...
stay up straight.
I don't know. I was like, how do you even jerry-rig this? Like, you have a candle on a stick. It's spinning. How is it staying lit?
Well, and
You have
like the
an
weight of
apple-
the apple is going to be heavier than the candle.
Yeah, I was
Probably
thinking that
balance
too.
it.
I was like, what's the logistics of setting this game up?
We gotta play this game. We gotta reinvent this game and play it one year.
Bring this game back.
Yeah, bring back Apple and Candle. I mean, come on. Been too long.
Well,
we put a taser on the end of it.
You just get tased in the face. by the fucking-
One side is a joint, the other side is a taser, and you're trying to take a hit.
Now we're on to
You're just
something.
gonna injure yourself with the joint, right? Like, is it gonna be?
Well,
a
you
fire?
might. You might.
You
There's
might.
two hazards and one good
You
thing.
could be putting the burnt end towards the person, right?
No, I'm trying to get the filter in, Abby.
So
You
one
can put it
time
vertical and go. Like,
You're just gonna
Okay.
get ash to the face.
Okay, sorry.
One more game, and then you guys can pick what game you're playing at recess. So, the last game I have for you that you could be playing in the 19th century after you finish mining for coal is called Hot Cockles. So, this game works with one player kind of like kneeling, and they like lay their head in the lap of another player. And then every other player takes turns kicking you in the ass. And you try to guess who's kicking you.
So it's heads up 7-Up, but with a lot of kicking involved.
Yeah. And it said another variation could be slapping the person.
Oh my god.
Okay, but guess the slap. That has
It's
been
guess
done.
the slap. It's guess the slap.
Oh my god. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I feel like you guess who slapped me.
I feel like, okay, this
I
is
guess
what I'm thinking.
we gotta find out.
I feel like Abby's doing funerals, I'm doing apple bobbing, and Nick's doing ass kicking. Is
I
how
kind
this
of
is
want to do
working
the
out at
apple
recess.
one, though. It sounds kind of fun.
No, that one honestly seemed the most normal because it was like pretty close to like
Yeah.
apple like bobbing.
Yeah, what are
Yeah.
two household items at the time?
And I've seen people do that game before without the candle, like just have like the apple hanging or something, and then you have to like try to get it with your hands behind your back, like during Halloween. Or I've
yeah.
seen people like do that with like their dogs as like enrichment, like have some kind of like treat that's hanging, so they have to like it like swings and they have to like run around.
Yeah, low-key, apple bobbing seems really hard. Like, it's hard to get your teeth around a whole apple.
Have you ever bought for apples before? I did once
I
at a
haven't.
birthday party.
It's
It
not
is
easy.
harder than it looks. It's like
Yeah.
frustrating too, and then you're getting wet because it's like full of water, and you're like, the apple's right there.
Yeah. Well, and the apples have gotten bigger, too, so it's even harder to get your jaws on them these days.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this isn't even something I took notes on, but a big thing at the time was like marriage games. Like who you would marry and like being married off was like such an important like aspect of the time. So there was a lot of like,
Fuck,
what
Mary,
was that?
kill.
Yeah, what was that game that you would like play with your hands, like MASH or something? And it'd be like, you're gonna marry so and so, and they have this house and this job.
Yeah, I
Like
think
it was a lot of
MASH.
like, yeah, it was a lot of like games like that where you would like pour candle wax or something like that, and it would like tell you who you're gonna marry. I didn't include that one because I was like, that just sounds lighthearted and fun.
Are these children's games or adult games?
These are all like things that children's would do. I mean,
oh, okay.
They hadn't
you're
invented
you're
stickball yet.
looking to marry kids
So
off starting
easy.
at like
Oh,
15,
yeah.
16, like.
Mhm.
So to me, that's like you're still a
Adulthood.
child.
You know,
Yeah.
midlife.
All right. So maybe a McDonald's Sprite is gonna send a Victorian child into a coma, but we cannot
They were
discount.
rubbing potassium on themselves.
That's what I'm saying. We cannot discount their tenacity of all these emaciated, bow-legged, chimney-sweeping Victorian-era children.
Black
They
lung
were-
having.
They were going through a lot, and they were doing their best, and they were providing for their family. And I think iPad kids today would not make it in 19th century London.
No.
Me today is not making it in 19th century London.
Yeah, I'd rather not be a chimney sweep. I think I'm good on that front.
Yeah,
I think-
what's the job you would try to avoid the most? Would it be the mines of the chimney sweep?
Ugh.
I think mine.
Probably the mines. You
I think-
don't even get to see the sun.
Fair.
And
Yeah.
and I'm not gonna get scrotum cancer.
But
So
that's
I'm
chimney
good
sweep.
there.
Oh,
Exactly.
you're
So I
okay.
think I'm going with the chimney
That's
sweep.
possible for you. Okay.
I'm not getting scrotum cancer. The
Because
problem
it's not
is
going to affect anything else.
the miners are getting paid and the chimney sweeps aren't.
Well, that's true. I
I
mean,
think-
rat catcher is the goal, right?
I was gonna say everyone's goal is rat catcher. I'm hopefully starting out as matchmaker, getting out before my jaw falls off, doing some rat catching, and living a happy life without rickets
Yeah.
if I can do it.
I could scare
Bumper
some
apples.
crows. I could scare some
Oh,
crows.
you're going countryside.
I might. Yeah, peaceful.
Yeah, Nick, you could have a nice quiet life scaring those crows.
Mm-hmm.
And then after work, I'm burying my dolls like they're dead little children from scarlet fever.
Was it the Victorian era where they took photos with their dead kids?
I don't remember, but I feel like that sounds very Victorian. Like they had such like a different relationship with death just because it was so much more
So familiar.
around.
Right, we didn't medicalize it yet. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so yeah, postmortem photography was common in the 19th century from the 1830s to the 1930s.
That was like all dead people, right? Like not just babies.
Yeah, there would be
Because-
like, photos of kids with their sister. But it
Yeah, 'cause
was,
I
think
know
a
that
lot
is
of babies, but I
something-
think that's because infant mortality was high.
Yeah, because I know that is something that they still do now. They'll do like stillborn photography, which is very sad. Like it's for the parents, like obviously, and that they do it like it's very respectful, like very like beautifully done. But and I know it's controversial. Like not every parent's like gonna want that, like want to see that, but like for the parents that do, it's probably like very cathartic to like have memories of their child, like if they weren't able to like develop memories with them.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely like the relationship with death in the Victorian era was like very different.
There's still people who take photos with their dead relatives, though.
Really?
Yeah, I can't
Yeah,
remember
different
exactly
cultures do more, I
where.
think. Yeah.
No, yeah, other cultures have. We'll get into it another time, but other cultures have
Yeah,
a lot
true, this could be
closer
a whole-
relationships with death than we do.
Mm.
Even just like open casket is like so strange to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
All
I'm
the
like,
funerals that my family has like had since I've been alive have been open casket.
I think every funeral I've been to is open casket, and I've never done the like, I've never been able to bring myself to do the like standing in line, like you like
Go look at
kind of
it.
like look at them. Yeah, they like you line up and you kind of like pay your respects, and I've always been
Yeah.
like, it's just like it's not them, but I see how it can be like cathartic for other people.
What is
Yeah,
that?
the first funeral I went to was my great grandpa's, and my
Mhm.
grandmother, that was her father, whatever. She like was hanging. I was like, I don't know, 14 maybe, but she was hanging around, her grandfather or her father, and she was like touching his hand and like holding his hand and stuff, and I was like, that's metal. Like grandma
Yeah,
goes hard. Like
it
she's
is-
touching dead bodies.
It is so interesting how like people like process grief so differently. Like
Mhm.
grief is so strange. Like everyone needs something else, and like to me, I'm like I don't want to see them dead, and I don't want to touch them dead. It's like it's not them anymore. But I can see how for other people, it's like they need to see it to like fully realize like the truth and like
Well, yeah,
have like a
and-
final goodbye. And
Yeah, and funeral homes usually do a very good job at making them look at rest, making them look peaceful.
yeah,
Did you see
mortician
Jimmy
like
Carter?
makeup and stuff is a
It's
very
better than
like
it's looked in, like-
interesting subject.
Yeah, Jimmy Carter's looked better than he has in like a decade.
Typically,
Best
older
he's
people
ever
tend to
looked.
look better because they'll either do makeup or like when they run the fluids, it'll bring
Plump them
like-
up a little bit.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's the most hydrated Jimmy Carter's been in 50 years.
Oh no.
Probably. R.I.P.
he
Jimmy.
was definitely
R.I.P. Jimmy.
giving like the chocolate episode of SpongeBob before he went out.
Man was old. Man had lived
He
life.
turned 100, right?
Yeah.
Damn, that's who I should have dressed up as for Connor's birthday party.
Oh, I don't think you could make that translate.
Do I need to
think
do? If
you'd
only I
have
had a
you'd have to, like,
wheelchair.
paint rolls on your body. Yeah.
If I had a
And just be
wheelchair,
naked.
And,
maybe
like,
I could
some
make
peanuts, a
one
jar of
to
peanuts.
just sit there like during the party, like make a little.
Just get
That would
a
actually be,
cardboard
like, the
cutout
toe
of
in the
Jimmy
corner.
Carter.
Yeah, if I had If I have time to craft, maybe I'll get Chocolate Girl going.
Mhm.
All right, before
Oh,
I close
God.
this out, do you guys have any last remarks for our listeners?
No, not really. That was a podcast. We did
Yeah,
one.
I'm excited to be back. I think we have a lot
I
of
know,
like
it's so
really
good to
fun
be back.
topics to come up. Do
We took
you
a
guys
little
know who's
hiatus.
presenting next week?
We
can't
should
remember
discuss
off the
that
top.
after the episode. I don't know.
Yeah.
I
Okay, we'll talk
It's
about
not
it.
me.
But there'll be more coming. And yeah, so follow us on Instagram. I'll post like the
Mhm.
images and stuff. It's this podcast. Wait, it's this
This-
pod counts on
Yeah,
Instagram.
this pod counts.
This pod.
Send us an email if you have anything to add, anything to say. Leave us a comment, leave us a like, subscribe wherever you can. And thank you guys for listening.
Yeah,
I'm
thanks for
excited for what's going to come
listening.
out
Thanks
this
for-
year.
Thanks for
Ooh,
making it
email
this
us.
far.
Yeah, email us an idea of a story you want us to talk about in 2025.
Yes,
True. Good
hit up
idea.
that email. This podcast,
Mhm.
wait, this pod counts at gmail.com. That's it.
Mhm.
Yeah, we'll talk about anything.
All right. Love you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening.
Wait, I want to play the. I'll edit this part. I'm gonna play the mute like outro song.
The outro, yeah.
This podcast counts as socializing. This podcast counts as socializing.